Hello, it's Will, back at it again with another video. Great to see you, come on in. Really enjoying you being here. Here I am with another video. Welcome to Will Thunder Talks. If you've never been here, I just talk about ideas, themes, things that are interesting to me, things that kind of float around in my head that I thought would be interesting to share with you. So come on in, enjoy. Today I'm going to talk about the prompt, I guess, for me here today is what is fundamental in life. So I kind of love this prompt because I think it points at some really cool things. You know, what is the point in life, right? I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of different ideas as to like what that is, right? And maybe this video is going to be a little more existential today. But I got some thoughts on kind of what is fundamental in life. Some people might believe it's religion. Some people might believe it's a political allegiance of some sort. Some people might believe it's a nation or whatever. But I guess there are some things that I kind of want to point out today and reflect on that I think hit this intersection of fundamentality in a really interesting way. I guess one of the first things I want to touch on is, and I touched on a little bit in my other videos, but relationships. Okay, so I believe regardless of like whatever material gain you want, whatever thing you want, wherever you want to go, whatever you're doing, it's all entangled in relationships. It all kind of comes back to how we relate to the other, right? So, for instance, if you are a workaholic and you want to work a lot, kind of in my experience, I've really felt and I've fallen into kind of workaholic patterns. But I feel it came from a desire or feeling, at least, of not being good enough and a desire to be good enough, right? And to prove that through action and to do and keep going in this flow of creating or making or working. And it never really actually scratched that itch, right? I still had that itch of like not feeling enough, not feeling like I'm moving in a good direction, not feeling like I have a path ahead of me, I guess, and I'm just like pouring into this bucket that I hope will be filled, but it has a hole in the bottom, right? I don't know if any of you guys are like me, but I felt like historically I really struggled to feel like there was like much innate value in me as a person, as an entity. In a lot of my relationships, I think it actually poisoned a lot of my relationships a lot, because I came into a lot of them with this energy of like, I'm really undeserving, I don't deserve to be in this relationship. Anything I get, scraps or whatever, like I'm grateful to have, right? Surviving off the scraps was a big part of like how I navigated the world for many years, being like, wow, I'm just like in the room and that's amazing. And like gratitude is great, right? You maybe you could argue that gratitude is the inversion of what I'm talking about here, right? But I really feel in your relationships when you like don't have a lot of self-worth, it leads you to abuse. Honestly, in my experience, it leads to not feeling like you can be valued by anyone, so you just accept whatever kind of poor relationships you're in. Okay? And it comes back to this fundamental idea I brought up before, right, of like what is fundamental in life. If your relationships suck, then you're gonna kind of be stuck in these like negative loops that go over and over and over again. And you guys might have experienced this. Where you fall into these similar patterns of being, similar patterns of relating, and then you feel like, whoa, I feel bad, but at least it's the devil I know, right? This is what I know. I'll stick with it because what's different could be worse, right? We can handle this, okay? So when I think about the fundamentality of these relationships, if that's a word, if you'll indulge me, I think, you know, what have we picked up in our lives that leads us down this road, and what can we do about it, right? I have to think about this a lot. What can we do about it? I guess in relationships, when I'm thinking about the fundamental aspect of this, like, what can't I handle about this, right? That's a question I've asked myself. What can't I handle about valuing myself? What position would that put me in when I think about how I relate to others? What risk is there for having boundaries, you know? For me, a lot of my early relationships were not great, and I feel like I had some really toxic experiences, especially with some maybe childhood friends, siblings, parents, that made me feel like I don't deserve to have my needs met in relationships, right? And you might have some of these kind of patterns too, right? If we kind of look at them, for me, it was like my mom, in her own description, is selfish. She thinks about her own needs all the time, right? And for me, in relation to that, I learned, oh, well, like, her needs always matter above mine, so I need to make sure her needs are met, right? So again, this comes back to the workaholic thing. If I try more, maybe I'll get some scraps, because I'm used to not getting anything else, right? And like, that's kind of sad when we think about it, but I say all of this because like awareness is really important when we're like navigating and trying to like undo these, right? I really find, for me, a lot of my process and journey was like, how do I feel worth? How do I feel value? How do I want to connect with people in an authentic way? Because like in my head, you have to want change in a way, and you don't always, right? When like you're in the fundamentals of your relationships, and you learn, hey, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve that. It's not even on your radar what you do and don't deserve. It's just like, how do I serve these people, right? And in a lot of ways, that served me in like a lot of the stuff I do, but also it helps neglect myself. It leads to me neglecting myself, and then this leads to me just being burnt out and stressed and overwhelmed and checked out, and then I'm like, oh well, maybe this is what I deserve, and I go down this negative spiral, right? And I really think about like how important that awareness is for me. Like, I know for me, if I make music, or I'm creative, or I have variety in my life where I like go out and I go for a walk, or I go lift some weights, or I'll go and hang out with some friends, or I'll have some time by myself. This variety keeps my mind fresh. It keeps my mind going, okay? It reduces this tendency to devalue my experience, because like I can engage with and be in these experiences, right? So the reason I'm even thinking about this question is like, how do we even take care of ourselves in this world we find ourselves in? And I point at relationships specifically, and what's fundamental about them is because I think we're having a relationship crisis. I think it's really hard to have fulfilling relationships in this world. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's been a bit of my arc to find satisfying relationships. But I really don't see a lot of people feeling super connected. I do in some of my circles, but also in the broader sense I don't, right? I think a lot of communities are struggling for a lot of reasons, right? A lot of individuals in these communities are struggling. And my heart goes out to them, man. Like, connecting is hard. So like, when I think about the fundamentals in life, relationships are right in there. You know, I've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before, but you need safety, security, to be able to sleep and eat. Those are super important. But to thrive, you need good relationships. And to get opportunities, you need good relationships, right? And whatever that looks like, you know? So I guess when I think about relationships, for me, I want to think about like, are they benefiting and I'm benefiting, right? And I guess a pattern I've fallen into historically is like, do I need to give more? Does this relationship need to be more? What am I doing in here right now? Reassessing, right? We don't do that too often. It's kind of scary, maybe, but sometimes our needs change, and like, that's okay. And I guess to round off this discussion a bit about what's fundamental in life, I think your relationships will kind of make or break, like what you do and where you go. So, try and be in them. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. I'm trying to be in my relationships. I'm trying to like understand my relationships explicitly instead of implicitly, with curiosity, with presence, with authenticity. Hey, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, what do you think about that? Right? And like, that's hard to do with strangers, but that's also hard to do in relationships where there's like pre-established loops of conduct, right? There's ways of being, talking with people and interacting. We fall in familiar patterns, right? When I see somebody from the poorer side of the UK where I grew up who's of that inflection, I fall into a bit of a blokey tone. I'm like, hey up man, how you doing? You know, that's kind of different to how I usually talk in the videos. Sometimes when I've talked to clients historically, I go American. I say y'all a little bit, and I have a bit of an American twang. And I'm not American. I'm from the UK. So it's interesting how even subconsciously, like for me, I kind of like fall into these patterns of relating, and I think it's really important to be aware of those, because it's going to help you understand maybe, and it certainly has helped me understand like what I'm doing, what my life is about direction-wise, right? Because if the relationships are kind of out of whack, that's a really good place to start, I think. So, that's it for today. You've been wonderful. I've been Will. It's been a pleasure having you here. I wish you all the success in whatever you do after this video. Take care and good luck.